Wagwan, everybody. Welcome to the Dis Affamie History podcast, where we'll be speaking about history and as well family history and how history relates in terms of Caribbean people for the present as well as in the past, and how in the past, what that does and brings forth for what we are going through at present and what we can learn from our history, from our family, and take that moving forward. So I do hope you enjoy the podcast. And if you like it, please ensure to subscribe, like, and review. Thank you.
Welcome to Dis Affamie History Podcast with your host, Wendy Aris. Today's episode takes us to the heart of Aruba's archival treasures and the dedicated professionals preserving them. We're joined by Mr. Peter Scholing of the Biblioteca Nacional Aruba and member of the Aruba National Commission for UNESCO, and Mr. Edric Crows from the National Archives of Aruba. Together they share their passion for safeguarding historical records, the importance of cultural preservation, and the exciting future of digital archives. We explore their work with the Internet Archive Project, a groundbreaking initiative making Aruba's historical documents accessible online to researchers, students, and the global community. If you're interested in Caribbean history, archival preservation, or the digital transformation of heritage records, this conversation is for you. So settle in and join us for this inspiring journey into the preservation and accessibility of Aruba's cultural heritage.
Thank you both, Peter and Edric, for coming on to the podcast, Dis Affamie History. And before we start, can I just have you just do a brief introduction of yourself?
My name is Edric Crows. I'm from Aruba. I'm working at the National Archives. Together with my colleague, we work on a bigger Aruban project and on mainly history, heritage, and making it as accessible as possible for Arubians on Aruba and really for the whole world and Caribbean, I would say.
Thank you so much. Peter?
So my name is Peter. I work at the National Library of Aruba. And, well, our organizations, National Archives and National Library, are two separate entities, but with a lot of commonalities and a long history of collaboration as well. And we extended that into our digital adventures as well. And now we have big digital collection called Collection Aruba, and it holds millions of pages of texts, almost 180,000 digital items, over 100,000 photographs, and we have additional projects as well, digitizing 3D items, slavery records, doing stuff with AI to make sure that the archives, the handwritten text, the manuscripts are machine readable and also searchable. And we've been having a lot of collaborations for like research projects, etc., coming in. So we've got a lot of things in our near future as well.
Oh wow, that's very robust, and I guess this, we'll just dive right into in terms of with the archives in Aruba. Like you mentioned it, like how comprehensive is the collection? Like you mentioned in terms of covering family records and genealogical data, and of course personal histories. But what else does the database that you have is available in Aruba?
Well, the database, we mostly focused on heritage.
Okay.
So you can find pretty much everything on it. I mean, family genealogy reports, data, but sports, pictures, and events, and just normal news. So we pick it up pretty on a big scale, I would say, and not thinking specifically for someone, but everybody can find their stuff on it.
Yeah, well, this project is not just the National Archives and the National Library. It also includes the museums, UNESCO, the University of Aruba, our national TV company, monuments agencies, investigative programs, the Department of Culture, museums in the Netherlands that hold our archaeological collections. So it's like it's stuff you'll find in the library, but also things that are related to Amerindian history that are in the museum, theses, school books, literature. And Edric was talking about the TV programs as well. It's the news. It's like top of the pops, the musical shows from the 80s, registrations of our carnival parades in video, but also in pictures. And then you have the books, and then you have the newspapers, and then you have the magazines and the archival collections. Yeah, it's a lot, and we try to be as complete as possible in anything anybody interested in Aruba or the region wants to research. So it's not just about digitizing parts of our collection for specific types of research, but we try to be as complete as possible. We also have just regular laws and the government publications, and including the books about family history, about genealogy, about early modern society here, the advent of modernity when the refineries were established on the island about 100 years ago. It's
like quite a lot.
Yes.
But because we combine everything together, someone will be looking for something and they'll find 10 other things they're interested in.
Yes.
And sometimes just in those magazines, you can find an old ad from the 50s with your great grandfather.
The company and
books.
Yeah.
So it's by combining everything in one search and making findable, you get to know a lot about yourself, your past, and your family too, on the smallest details, I would say. Because mainly we're looking for, when we search for genealogy in the registers, birth, marriage, when someone passed away. But sometimes in the textbooks, text collecting books, you get an address. You get to see what happened, where they lived, and how they moved on the island. So if you lived in certain parts and then moved after a couple of years, you can project upwards mobility. So those fine stuff tells a lot of stories about how people, locals, migrants, and people move on to from the island. They come to Aruba and they leave again. And it tells a story about Aruba. But the main important, our Caribbean, what makes us Caribbean, we're like, we move a lot from island to island to main and back and forth. And along those paths, we bring cultures in, we intermingle with culture. And that would make us quite Caribbean, I would say, the movement through the islands, through time, and taking pieces and bringing pieces back to other places also.
Yeah, and it's also, you can see it back in the musical TV programs I talked earlier about. Yeah, it's a mix of styles. It has Colombian music in it, but also music influenced by the people in the styles from the Dominican Republic and from the Windward Islands, etc. It's so diverse, and because somebody recorded it or wrote about it or it ended up in a newspaper, we have it here in our collections, and now we're making it available. And it's you can find if you people come to the library and sometimes they have they're interested in a specific event on a specific day. Maybe it could be a car crash. They have to investigate something for their insurance or something. Well, you can also do that. You can also come here, or you don't even have to come here. You can just do it from your computer and investigate your family's history. Well, the part that has been recorded here on the island. It doesn't give you the entire story because the puzzle pieces from the other islands or the rest of a person's life stories may be recorded somewhere else. But we tried to mitigate that as well by incorporating newspapers from Bonaire and from Curacao, for instance, as well, and try to not be just as narrow as only things that pertain to Aruba, but everything that's relevant as well. Our library, my National Library, where I work, we have a national collection, but we also have, well, the name of the department that holds the physical holdings called Arubiana, but it's called Arubiana Caribbeana. So it's a Caribbean collection as well. So, and we're digitizing that as well. So sometimes you have stuff, well, I mentioned the refinery, for instance. Well, a lot of people from the British Islands, the English-speaking islands, came to Aruba to work. They started a family here. They participated in sport events, and then they, maybe when they made enough money, built their house back on their own islands, and many of them went into politics. And we have early records of them, or even videos about many notable people. And Edric has a really cool story about that, because sometimes because we're one of the first islands that's digitizing their stuff in such a scale, we get a lot of requests from all around the world, and not even about Aruban people. It can be just people that were here for just a couple of years.
So yeah, for instance, we have a 20 minutes film of Maurice Bishop from Grenada, for instance. He came to Aruba, he gave a speech, he met some Grenadians, I think. And his speech, his time on Aruba, he was born here when he was a kid. And his time on Aruba was recorded. And these recordings are quite interesting because you hear his speech. And for a news channel in Chicago, I think, they're making a podcast with Don Rojas, his right hand. And they use this footage to illustrate how it was, what he says, what he tells. And for us as archivists, we think it's nice to have, but for other people, it's like treasures, vault, jewels.
Yes.
And because we don't have restrictions on what we can put on, we don't have to make, I would call it, difficult decisions what to put and what not, thinking with the glasses of, is this meant for Arubians or not? So because we have that opportunity, we can just put it and let it get away and be important to those that's important.
Yeah, usually when you have a website, you have limited space.
Yes.
And you have to make, well, decisions on the quality of the material that you put online, or the quantity, or what you do first. And yeah, those, like Edric said, those decisions, if you have enough space, well, it has its limits, but we haven't reached it yet by far. We have like terabytes of information online right now. So we decide, well, just digitize the things that have to do with Grenada or other islands as well. And that's why that material also becomes available, and it's relevant. It's always relevant for somebody. So that's basically our why we decide to do that, because it's easy for us to do and it's part of our collections. Maybe nobody has come to our institution and actually asked for it, because maybe they don't know about it, or they're interested in other stuff, Aruban history specifically. But yeah, apparently people trying to making a documentary about Maurice Bishop found it quite interesting to use that previously unseen footage.
No, absolutely. And what you described is that it's a very centralized database that you have. So, and I know Aruba is one of the first islands to kind of have things online, and not only online, but you have as well a collaboration with Internet Archives.
Yeah, that's usually when you are digitizing your stuff just to preserve it, well, you need to store it somewhere, but it doesn't mean it gets used or people know about it. And usually what's the big limitation is having the budget to to develop a website, to pay for enough space. If you put a lot of stuff online, you hope it becomes popular, but you have to pay a bill for the website traffic as well. So that means that you need even more budgets. So that was a limiting factor for quite a long time, until we had a chance encounter with a visitor to the island who I gave a tour of the library. And she works at the Internet Archive. And she said, well, you're describing all kinds of limitations, but maybe where I work, we might have a solution for that. So we started in 2018, the library started uploading stuff to the Internet Archive. And it's now grown into something that's, well, basically most of the heritage institutions on the island are contributing to, and institutions from other islands and from Europe as well. And it has grown into something, well, huge. And it's not just available on the Internet Archive, but also on our own website, in our own interface, where we can show it in our local language, Papiamento. We can make decisions about, like, maybe something isn't, well, it needs a bit more explanation for people that are not used to using the internet a lot. Then you can explain it in your own language. You can develop materials for that. And you can, if something doesn't really come out the way you want it on the Internet Archive, well, we have control over the entire interface, how we present something. So in certain cases, we enhanced the interface. And one of the examples is something you brought up in our earlier conversation, is the 3D stuff. That's things from, there are always objects in museums, and you can take a picture of it and make it available, but it's still not the way you would like it. Well, you all know, and that's probably a recurring topic in your podcast as well, that a lot of the information about our islands is not on our islands. Yeah. So how do you deal with that? And a lot of the information, or a lot of the artifacts, the objects that are in museums, archaeological artifacts, aren't even being displayed there. There's an entire discussion going on about repatriation, relocating the objects back to its origins, to the islands. And we have started those discussions with, for instance, we're part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, so we've been discussing those kinds of things with the authorities and the museum institutions in the Netherlands. And we thought, well, while this is going on, these talks, well, if the information is digitally available, you can exchange that as well. And then you can at least present it in its original context. And usually what you get is, and that's your other tab, usually you just get a picture of an object. It's just a flat picture. And you have no idea what it is. Maybe there's something written just at the other side that wasn't photographed. And that's basically it. So this says National Museum of World Cultures in the Netherlands. It's we call it a kalbas. I have no idea what it's in English. Well, is it a fruit?
I think it still uses the same thing.
So what we received from that museum is all the objects that have in their description, metadata, etc., have Aruba in it. So they were found on Aruba, taken from Aruba, and in this case, it was in the World Museum in Leiden, in the Netherlands. So what did we get back was that picture, but for some of the objects that are held and now are owned by that museum in the Netherlands, there was a loan and exchange a couple of years ago. So there was, I think, a set of like 7 or 8 objects that is currently in our National Archaeological Museum. And we took the opportunity to, while they're on loan, to 3D scan them and to make those available. And if you, it makes a world of a difference. And not specifically with this one, but there are other objects you can see. Well, you can turn around, you can zoom in, you can.
Yeah.
There's something written on the back. Some of the other ones are figurines and like little statues. And if you have like a scroll wheel on your mouse, then it's easy to do. If you are looking at this on a touchscreen device or a tablet or a phone, then you can just pinch it and then it becomes bigger.
Yeah.
You can study it into details, and especially those figurines, there are like urns, and there's a cork in it, and there's behind one of the ears, there's a hole in it, for instance. Well, those things you cannot see if you're just looking at a object photograph from one specific angle. And if you imagine that currently in Aruba, there's a lot of schools being, modernized. They're getting access to more modern equipment. Well, some of them include like the digital school boards.
Mm-hmm.
They're like big touch screens. So imagine the difference between just looking at a flat picture, inanimate objects, or being able to explore these things just by walking up front and just doing this on a big screen and then incorporating that in your history lessons. And that's especially vibrant when you talk about, maybe something like this. It's just a natural object that was adapted to serve as a drinking cup, for instance. But the other archaeological objects, they have like painting on it and they have intricate patterns and stuff. So if you can use something like that in your history lessons, in your cultural lessons, instead of just looking at a book where there's a low resolution picture in it, for instance, well, that makes a world of difference. And if you take the one on the bottom, the right one, that's one of our interesting. Yeah, that's the one I like the most. And the cool thing is you can go to the archives and go to the museum and look at these things as well, but they're behind glass.
That's right.
But what you can also do with this, and that's a new thing, you can also use these 3D scans, download the file, and then 3D print it. And then you can use it as like an object that can be touched in a museum or something that is in a classroom, for instance. So usually museums are full of stuff that you cannot touch, but if you have a 3D copy of it, then you can use it for everything. So that's also something we have in the digital collections, museum objects. And well, most of them are just pictures of pottery shards or just stuff that you can look at, but maybe you can zoom in, but not really more than that. Well, these are a different kind of way you can interact with and learn about these objects.
No, absolutely, because based on what is on the Aruba website, you have more flexibility to move these objects around as opposed to on Internet Archives, where it's just a static picture of the item.
Yeah, and even while we're discussing at some point with the consortium in the Netherlands that's making a database of all the museum objects that aren't originally from the Netherlands. They were talking about, well, if we present these things if we present it in a 3D scan, would you be satisfied with that? Well, depending on how you look at it, you can also say, well, if you are satisfied with a 3D copy yourselves, you're ready to send the objects over, and then you can still study the 3D objects, and then it makes the discussion of repatriation have an interesting extra dimension as well.
No, absolutely. Just for being able to do all of this and to have it available. So when people are searching on the website, that I have here now. Is it just best? What would be the best method? Is it just to type it in or to click on each one of these different tabs to kind of further
So
drill?
what you see at the top is the different institutions that are participating, our partners. So if you know what these are and you're maybe a local, you can say, well, I'm looking for a monument, so I have to go into that collection. But we decided that that's not the only way that we have to present stuff. So if you browse a bit, go down a bit,
Okay.
then you can see thematic collections. So if you want to look directly at the newspapers, our refinery collection, our carnival collection, World War II stuff, photograph collections, you can do that as well. You see the Memory of the World logo. We just registered some the slavery records from the archives, along with some documents from the National Library. We're just inscribed in the International UNESCO Memory of the World Register. So we have like a online thematic exhibit for that as well. And you can even search in the handwritten text. So if you're looking for your family name in those records, you can also go directly to the source and put in a keyword, and it works just as fine as if you're looking in a modern document or a recently published book, for instance. So those are the kinds of things you can, well, that's the browsing stuff. And then you can also search for keywords in descriptions and also in full text. So that means that newspapers, things published last week, things published 400 years ago. If it's in text, then you can use a full text search as well.
Perfect. And then just for up here, everything in that's blue kind of highlight, you can click on there as well to kind of
so that's in Papiamento. So what you see there is in Papiamento. So that means that we have 67,000 documents, texts. Well, that's just been adding a lot of photographs, images. So we have 109,000 images right now, 1,500 videos, oral history interviews, TV programs, press. We have press conferences during the pandemic, old 8mm films from decades ago. So we don't have a lot of just audio objects those kind of tapes take a bit of specialized equipment. We have it, but we're just starting with that basically.
Okay.
We have a total of seven 3D objects. We hope we can digitize the entirety of our museum collections, for instance. But yeah, that's also specific equipment that you need. So and in total, it's like almost 180,000 digital items, millions of pages, and it's also for our language, Papiamento. It's it's the largest text corpus of the language of Papiamento. And before we put these things online, people always said, well, it's so hard to find something in Papiamento on the internet. And in modern days, it's just like you don't exist, right? So being visible, being accessible makes a world of difference, and it's helpful for local people, but it's helpful for the diaspora, for people living abroad and not being able to just fly back to access something they want to read or want to investigate. But it's also interesting for anybody interested in Caribbean history. We just have basically the Aruban part of the puzzle, but it's still interesting. So now you're looking at all the holdings by the National Archives. So that's Edric's work.
Perfect. And the question I have here is, so you mentioned that it can't be searched in Papiamento. Can it be searched as well in English and in Dutch, or is there other ways?
So
so it can be searched on metadata.
Okay.
So like what archivists and librarians put on a subject, on an item, but because there's OCR and we put on the documents a special layer, a transcribers handwritten text recognition, you can search inside those handwritten text documents too. And I think there's now like 40,000 scans documents that before text recognition, you should go read them one by one.
Mm-hmm.
But now they're searchable. You can look in places, or you'll discover stuff in place that no one would look into.
So what you can do is, well, all these texts are originally written in a language. So for instance, what you have there, just to the left, to the right of the yellow sub-collection, you have a document in Dutch. Then the next one is in English. But even if you click on the Dutch one, that means that the words in it are in Dutch. So if you search in full texts, then you get stuff only in Dutch, but it doesn't really help you if you're reading English. Well, we have a solution for that as well.
Okay.
So if you use the scroll bar on the right, if you go down a bit, so you see that the language is in Dutch, but you can, we implemented for those that are interested in the subject, but maybe cannot read that text. Well, if you click on it, it defaults to Papiamento.
Okay.
Since last year, we have Google Translate in Papiamento as well. And maybe if you're used to, English Google Translate has been available for like decades already, but so it might be an obvious thing for most people, but Papiamento support was just implemented last year. If you see on the top right of your page, you see translation.
Yes.
If you click that, you can use not that one,
the other one.
That one.
Okay.
So now what you see on the top, you see Google Translate Dutch, and where it says Papiamento, you can choose English, you can choose Russian, Chinese.
Tell me translation, just original. Oh, here it is. Okay. They just take.
So if you click where you see Papiamento now, that's all the Google options are there.
Wow.
So if you are a native speaker of any of these languages, but you are still able to read a Dutch colonial document, maybe it's not perfectly translated, but it will help you figure it out. Well, English is also in there. So if you click English in the second column, then it translates to English, and it's at least understandable what the document is about. And seeing that the Dutch Caribbean is just, it's just 6 islands of many islands that speak other languages. So we're like the odd one out in some research contexts. And we know that we cannot mitigate it completely because we have the fact that this stuff was written down by Dutch people 200 years ago. But still, you can use the translation and as a research tool to start investigating. And for instance, we are the Dutch Caribbean, but not a lot of people actually use Dutch on a regular basis or can read 19th century Dutch, or even in this case, it's 18th century Dutch. So what you're seeing is an old document about your island's history, but it's in a language that you don't speak, but it has information about your ancestors, about your environment. So just being able to present it in Papiamento means a world of difference as well. It's just connecting two pieces of existing technology, and that's something we added ourselves. If you look at the same document on the Internet Archive, well, it has the standard interface, but we added to it, and we think it's more usable. So yeah, that's what we're trying to adapt things to our local contexts, add interface elements that are useful for us, helpful for the people that we know are interested in these things, and it might just be, as a spin-off effect, it might be just as helpful for somebody thousands of miles away as well.
No, absolutely. This is, as I said, it just houses everything in here to be able to go to one data source. And as you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of the migration that happens within the Caribbean, and that people can be in, let's say, the island of Aruba for a short period of time, or they were born there and then they left as well. There are the shipping records. Is that correct? To make sure.
Well, the archives, in our, it's in our colonial context, there's a lot of stuff that's stayed here in the archives, but most of it was taken to the Netherlands. And some of these things are, Aruba was one of the minor islands in the Dutch Caribbean, or in the colony of Curacao, what it was called at the time. So a lot of records are in the next island over, in the bigger center of the colony in Willemstad in Curacao. So I think the shipping records specifically are there, and not accessible online yet. We do have migration records. We have a lot of records from our regular census data, our marriage and births and things like that, but also the what's it called? The immigration card. So that's a project we're working on. We're going to present about it in the next Acro conference in a couple of weeks. It's beginning of June. We're going to talk about expanding the current data set, which was based on our slavery records, which we've reconstructed like family trees up to 5 generations for records that only were kept for like 20, 23 years. So going back 5 generations in such a small period of time, it's something, but a lot happened afterwards, right? In 1863, was abolished in the Dutch colonies. And then a lot of things happened that we haven't connected to those people's timelines yet. And we're trying to complete that picture by connecting other records.
Land records.
Yes.
And the marriage, they got married.
Yeah. And from the other islands as well.
Other islands. Yeah. So people move. They went to Curacao and to the mainland.
To Venezuela.
Yeah.
Puerto Rico.
Yeah, we were talking about, I know before we recorded, like when we had our pre-meeting, about those immigration cards when people would travel to, let's say, South America, where they would have those as well. And those are part of the collection as well?
Well, that's the next thing up for digitization and also for transcribing. So it has a lot of...
It's like 50,000 cards with photographs and where people came from. And it tells a story of how they moved on the island Aruba, and they move on, some of them. Some went back, some went to New York, for instance. They married here, and mostly the ladies went with the husband. So you have Arubian ladies that married, for instance, Dominican men, and they moved and they spread across the world.
Yeah, and we don't know from our records what happened with them, but at some point we, just like we did with our slavery records, we connected them with the Curacao records, with the Suriname, Bonaire, Statia records, etc. And we're still having a lot of like loose ends, stories that are, they stop in our records, but they continue somewhere else. We just have to find them and connect them.
Yeah.
It sounds easy. It takes a lot of work, especially when it's not in your institution.
It depends on other people.
But that's the basic idea. We want to paint a complete as possible picture of like 19th and 20th, early 20th century Aruban history, and including passers-by, people that were only here for a few years, but made an impression and were recorded in some way or form.
Yeah. No, you have encompassing so much in your, both on the Aruba side, in terms of on that website, as well as, I guess, has everything migrated over onto the Internet Archive or not really?
No. So once we have digitized, there's still a lot we have to process, we have to do. So you're always a bit behind. Yeah. Not everything you digitize is online the next day, for instance. So there's always, it takes some time. We just received a collection of already digitized videos, oral history interviews from Boy Antoine, from historian, storyteller, program journalist, and interviewer, oral history investigator from Bonaire. He interviewed a lot of people on that island, but on neighboring islands as well.
Okay.
Well, he just gave us a hard drive with 2,000 of his TV shows on it, 2,000 different interviews. And we started uploading it in April. And now we have reached like 400 videos uploaded. And we were just talking that maybe it's until like Christmas that the last one is online. And all of the things that are in our regular digital collection are basically stored on servers of the Internet Archive.
Yeah.
That's off island, but we're going to, well, it's being shipped at the moment. We're getting our own server as well. So we have a local copy and maybe backups then in San Francisco and in Egypt and in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
And apart from that, we have like our special projects, which are like the people database, the database of the enslaved people, our timelines, our story maps, things like that, that we are storing on our local web server. So they're part of the Aruba collection website, but that's you cannot find back on the Internet Archive because it's not just a single digital album. It's a database, or it's a visual timeline, or something combined with a story combined with a map that uses resources and documents and videos and images that we have in our regular digital collection, but are being used in a different way to tell that story, or to create a narrative about that specific topic. And Edric has done a lot of research. We have a lot of interesting stories still to tell.
Yeah.
But we started with using story maps for a couple of those already.
What's interesting about using Internet Archive, mostly when you have a website, you have a server, the back end, and it's closed. So you have to go through one website to get through it. But because Internet Archive is open, so people don't have to look for Collection Aruba. So we get a lot of people that's searching for a race car, for instance, and they don't find it via our website, but through the Internet Archive. So sometimes we get mails from all over the world, from Serbia to Los Angeles, indie pop writers in Los Angeles, Chicago podcast makers and programs made.
Artists in France, people researching the Irish in the Caribbean, and they encounter a painting made by an Irishman in early colonial times in Aruba, for instance. So the cool thing is, something can be relevant in a completely different way for anybody just using the internet. Some of them are interested specifically in Aruba, but some of them encounter stuff just by Googling it or using the Internet Archive. We have a lot of stuff in collaboration with Wikimedia Commons as well. Aruba is now the first island in the Caribbean, I think, even, that has a Wikimedian in residence. It's a project with the Wikimedia Foundation that we're doing, and that connects, well, a lot of data, a lot of information about our island and about just things across the world, but written in our Papiamento language with the things we're working on. And that's interesting because the more ways you can access something, the more value it can bring. And in more context that you can present it, it might be relevant in some way or form in one context, but it can have a completely different impact or meaning or significance if it's just presented in another way.
Exactly.
I was in a panel a couple of years ago, and there was somebody just interested in recipe books across the world, and also with an African influence. And we have a lot of recipe books, but we don't really think a lot about well, sometimes about its origin, certain foods that would have how we prepare things. But if you match dishes with a African cookbook
Ingredients.
and the ingredients, and it makes sense in completely different way, and then it has just a meaning in, well, a sequence of recipes for a specific occasion in Aruba. But the context is there, but if you present it in the other context, then it makes sense, for instance.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You're just combining everything and making sure that the culture, the history of the island is captured in one place, and you're just leveraging, Internet archives for that as well. So, as we come to a close here, what would you advise to give someone, the use of the database for the first time when they're tracing their Caribbean roots? How would you say that it's user friendly, that they can just, start typing away? Like, what advice would you give?
Well, specifically, if you're looking for your family history, then you might, you'll might find information about people that left their imprints are recorded in Aruba. So that's maybe limited in Caribbean sense. So you won't find a lot of records from other islands because we haven't added them yet. But if you look at it in like an entire collection sense, we have a lot of books about the Caribbean and about general topics. We have maps. If you're from an island that has a carnival tradition, masquerade tradition, things like that, it's quite interesting to see what kind of twists and variation on the same theme with slightly different musical interpretations we have on Aruba, for instance. So, yeah.
Telephone books. Those are interesting.
Yeah.
So many people see telephone books as just a book.
Yes. Yes.
Besides the National Library.
Yeah.
Because there's so much information about how people came and where they live, the names, the spellings, and you can do a lot of data analysis on them.
Neighbors, people. Well, what we did, we have like all the telephone books, just like Edric said, here in the library. We haven't digitized all of them yet. We did them now with like 5-year intervals. That hopefully covers most people.
Yes,
we can then trace back and see in the other phone books as well. But if you look at it, it's usually put there in the alphabetic sense. But if you can search it, then you can see where somebody lived, and especially where the neighbors are. You can do the data analysis, groupings of people coming from the same island, for instance, or with the same last name, where that's where they lived and where they moved to, etc. So Aruba is a small island, so those migration patterns on the island themselves are quite limited, but still significant, and it can be traced back to the first landowners and to emancipation, etc., etc. But we have so many pieces of information, texts and maps, etc., that contain information. Yeah, we want to connect everything. We cannot do that, but at the same time, we are not keeping the source information to ourselves. Usually, if you do research, you protect your sources a bit, or you're the only one that knows where to find everything.
Yeah.
But we're doing the research, but everything that we haven't connected yet, you can access it because we've already digitized it and put online already.
Yeah.
So that leaves another interpretation from another researcher with another perspective, or maybe they can disprove things that we're trying to connect as well. So that it's like a democratization of all that research information and research data as well.
No,
I think it's important what we do is making as much as accessible as possible.
Absolutely.
For everybody.
Yes. Yeah, no, I found that your site is very comprehensive. It has everything that you've mentioned, that anybody that could be able to look is what they're looking for. So I do appreciate you both coming on, Edric and Peter, to talk about this, because I mean, when I first saw it, I was just like, I have to talk to you guys. And then, we had our pre-meeting and we talked for quite some time as well. But no, I appreciate you coming on and discussing this, because again, people are out there searching and wanting to know where to find information. So thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you so much for highlighting our efforts.
Mhm.
And we love listening to your podcast. So,
Thank you.
yeah, we'll tune in for the other ones as well.
Perfect.
So,
Perfect.
well,
Thank you
thank you so much for dedicating the episode to Aruba and to our work.
Yes. No, thank
Thank
you. I truly appreciate you guys were able to come on and to speak about it, because as I said, certain people, when you're researching your family or just enjoying researching in general, you're very passionate about it and you want to make sure that everybody kind of knows about it and where to find the information. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hoped you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please make sure to like, follow, subscribe, and write a review for the episode wherever you listen to your podcast. Thank you.